called out to God and made his complaint known, and
Mm-hmm.
said he was the only one left of the prophets to do right.
Okay, okay. Isn't it interesting? Wow. So John the Baptist takes on this image of Elijah, this New Testament image of the Old Testament Elijah, but we're talking about Elijah tonight. Anybody else? What do you know about Elijah? Anybody? Anything come to your mind?
I just see him as having a very, very close connection with the Lord.
Yeah,
Very, very close.
yeah.
That's the way I look at him.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Others, anyone? Okay. Yeah, and also Elijah was taken up. Yeah. One of two people in Scripture, at least in the Hebrew Bible, where we can say we're taken up. Turn to 1 Kings 18. 1 Kings 18. And I want to really talk to some people. We talked about it a little on Sunday. Some people maybe in this holiday season in an emotional jail cell, a spiritual jail cell. Reminded me some years ago, in Georgia, was a pastor. I won't say his name. God rest his soul. Who told his family to go ahead, church. I'm gonna meet you there. He didn't go nowhere. He stayed in the driveway of his house, held his preaching Bible in his hand, with one hand, and a gun in the other hand, and killed himself in his truck on Sunday morning. I'll never forget when I met him. Happy to. I said, hey, man, good to meet you. I heard a lot about you. Yeah, man, good to meet you. Man, we got to connect, and I'll bring you over to preach sometime. I'll be glad to. That joyous dude. That happy dude. Verse 1. Came to pass after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the third year, saying, go present yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the earth. So Elijah went to present himself to Ahab, and there was a severe famine in Samaria. And Ahab had called Obadiah, who was in charge of his house. Now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly, for so it was while Jezebel massacred the prophets of the Lord that Obadiah had taken 100 prophets and hidden them, 50 to a cave, and had fed them with bread and water. Ahab said to Obadiah, go into the land to all the springs of water and to all the brooks. Perhaps we may find grass to keep the horses and mules alive, so that we will not have to kill any livestock. So they divided the land between them to explore it. Ahab went one way by himself, and Obadiah went another way by himself. So this is famine in the land, bad situation. Jezebel, Ahab's evil wife, is slaughtering folk. The text here uses the word massacre. Obadiah takes 100 prophets of the Lord, gets them away from the situation. Verse 7. Now as Obadiah was on his way, suddenly Elijah met him. And he recognized him, fell on his face, and said, is that you, my Lord Elijah? And he answered him, it is I. Go tell your master Elijah is here. So he said, how have I sinned that you are delivering your servant into the hand of Ahab to kill me? Right? Think about this. This is Elijah and an evil king. He said, go tell him I'm here. That's pretty bold, right? That's Lord have mercy. As the Lord your God lives, there is no nation or kingdom where my master has not sent someone to hunt for you. And when they said he is not here, he took an oath from the kingdom or nation that they could not find you. And now you say, go tell your master Elijah is here? And it shall come to pass, as soon as I am gone from you, that the Spirit of the Lord will carry you to a place I do not know. So when I go and tell Ahab, he cannot find you, he will kill me. So he's concerned about telling Ahab that Elijah's here, because if Elijah's nowhere to be found, Ahab's going to kill him, right? Let's go to verse 13. Was it not reported to my Lord what I did when Jezebel killed the prophets of the Lord, how I hid 100 men of the Lord's prophets, 50 to a cave, and fed them with bread and water? And now you say, go tell your master Elijah is here. He will kill me. So Obadiah is kind of like, Elijah, what you doing, man? If I go do what you tell me to do, this man's going to kill me. Then Elijah said, as the Lord of hosts lives, before whom I stand, I will surely present myself to him today. So don't worry, when you tell him I'm here, I'm going to show up. Then it happened when Ahab saw Elijah, this is a famous passage of scripture right here, that Ahab said to him, is that you, O troubler of Israel? Other translations say, oh, is that you, you troublemaker? In other words, Ahab is saying, everything we're going through is your fault because you're a troublemaker. You're always causing mess. And he answered, I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have. Now, this is bold stuff. He's talking to the king here. In that you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord and have followed the Baals. Now, therefore, send and gather all Israel to me on Mount Carmel, 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. Now, this is where we go to this. Y'all remember this? Anybody remember this? Any Bible readers? We're talking about King Ahab. We're talking about Mount Carmel. We're talking about him and his engagement with the prophets of Baal and Asherah, right? So Ahab sent for the children of Israel, gathered the prophets together on Mount Carmel. By the way, we're reading this for a reason. And Elijah came to all the people and said, how long will you falter between two opinions? This is another famous text right here. 1 Kings 18 is filled with a few of them. If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, follow him. But the people answered him not a word. Then Elijah said to the people, I alone am left a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Therefore, this is what we're going to do. This is where it gets good. Let them give us 2 bulls, and let them choose 1 bull for themselves, cut it in pieces, lay it on the wood, put no fire under it, and I will prepare the other bull, lay it on the ground, put no fire under it. Then you call on the name of your gods, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he is God. So all the people answered and said, it is well spoken, meaning okay, let's get to it. Let's do it. Now Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose 1 bull for yourselves, prepare it first, for you are many. Call on the name of your God, put no fire under it. So they took the bull which was given to them, prepared it, called on the name of Baal from morning till noon, saying, Baal, hear us. This is where the writer gets comical, right? Oh, Baal. But there was no voice, no one answered. Then they leaped about the altar which they had made. And this is the funniest verse to me of the whole passage, verse 27. And so it was at noon, Elijah mocked them and said, cry aloud. keep on calling Baal, right? Keep on, for he is a god. Either he is meditating, so he's messing with him, right? Or maybe he's busy, or maybe old Baal is on a journey, or perhaps he's sleeping and somebody needs to wake him up. Now, so they don't like that. So they cry, they keep on crying. Then they start cutting themselves, as was their custom, with knives and lances until the blood gushed out on them. And when midday was past, they prophesied until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, but there was no voice, no one answered, no one paid attention. In other words, they calling on Baal all day. Then Elijah said to all the people, come near to me. So all the people came near to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord that was broken down. Elijah took 12 stones according to the number of tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, Israel shall be your name. Then with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he made a trench around the altar large enough to hold 2 seahs of a seed. And he put the wood in order, cut the bull in pieces, laid it on the wood, and said, fill water pots with water, and pour it on the burnt sacrifice and on the wood. Then he said, do it a second time. They did it a second time. He said, do it a third time. They did it a third time. So the water ran all around the altar, and he also filled the trench with water. It came to pass at the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice that Elijah the prophet came near and said, Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that you are God in Israel, and I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Hear me, O Lord. Hear me, that this people may know that you are the Lord God, and that you have turned their hearts back to you again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt sacrifice, and the wood and the stones and the dust, and it licked up the water that was in the trench. In other words, Elijah, what's a hidden gem here is Elijah puts all this water on it intentionally, right? He fills all this water because the goal is to say that when God shows up, it ain't going to be no doubt. We making sense here? Right? Now, when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces. They said, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. And Elijah said to them, seize the prophets of Baal. Do not let one of them escape. So they seized them. Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon and executed them. Elijah said to Ahab, go up, eat and drink, for there is the sound of abundance of rain. So Ahab went up to eat and drink, and Elijah went up to the top of Mount Carmel. Then he bowed down on the ground, put his face between his knees, and said to his servant, go up now, look toward the sea. So he went up and looked and said, there is nothing. And 7 times he said, go again. Then it came to pass the 7th time that he said, there is a cloud as small as a man's hand rising out of the sea. So he said, go up, say to Ahab, prepare your chariot, go down before the rain stops you. Now it happened in the meantime that the sky became black with clouds and wind, and there was a heavy rain. So Ahab rode away and went to Jezreel. Then the hand of the Lord came upon Elijah. He girded up his loins and ran ahead of Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. What a powerful chapter. We're reading it off. I know we're doing a lot of reading. I'm sorry. I know y'all not used to this, but this is important. So this is amazing. Famine in the land. Little situation with him and Ahab. Situation with the prophets of Baal. God is victorious. And then rain comes that covers the famine that had been in the land that they were trying to figure out how they were going to deal with. Y'all realize this? Y'all got it? Next chapter. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done. I'm going to stop right there. Jezebel. My pastor, Pastor Wade, y'all know I love him dearly, and he preached a sermon one time. He said, have you ever heard of a woman named Jezebel? Think about it. I don't know nobody named Jezebel. He said, you ever heard of a woman named Jezebel? I said, no. He said, you ever heard of anybody named Jezebel? I said, no. He said, you ever heard of a dog named Jezebel? I said, never heard. He said, because the association with Jezebel is pure, unadulterated evil. I used to hear the old women talk at church sometimes. Lord forgive you for saying it, but you hear them talking. They say, "Oh, Jezebel." Right? See, y'all know some of your mothers and grandmothers. They used to say that kind of stuff. Oh, Jezebel, right? Because that meant that you were a type of individual. So Ahab told Jezebel, his wife, evil connotation there. Also how he had executed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel, the evil one, sent messenger to Elijah saying, so let the gods do to me and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. So all those prophets that died, at 450, she said, I'm going to make you just like them. Elijah, you're going to die by tomorrow. And when he saw that, this is Elijah, he arose and ran for his life and went to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. And that is the part that makes everybody question. Dude, my man, Elijah, you just prayed for fire in the previous chapter. It consumed the altar and all the water that was on it. You knocked out the prophets of Baal. And now, this Jezebel, right? The older folks, they say that, the Jezebel, and, you hear them say the old heifer, that kind of stuff, right? This old, yeah, I grew up around older folks, so I know all that stuff, right? So you hear that, and you running. Because what we see on the outside in one instance isn't always indicative of what's really going on inside. So I can be bold in this instance. I can come and do all this stuff, and right? But maybe if something else comes, that same boldness won't be there. Maybe that's somebody out there. In one context, you've trained yourself to be one way, potentially only to hide what may really be going on inside. Ma'am.
I was just thinking that when it came to him speaking of what the Lord would do for somebody else, he was bold and strong. But when it came to himself, that's where his doubts came.
Yeah, I can do it. Again, John the Baptist baptizing folk, doing all this stuff, but he gets thrown in jail, and it gets kind of iffy at that point, right? So easy to talk about other folk. Yeah. Huh? Oh, we are? We're frozen. I think we're frozen, but we'll keep going. Yeah. But when it comes to us, it's kind of tough sometimes. Am I making sense tonight? It's something I really want us to wrestle with.
John was out his comfort zone. He's used to the wilderness, eating locusts, and to be locked up and you used to the wilderness, that's a whole new world. So I could see him kind of going through an emotional or psychological thing.
Yeah, it'll mess you up. We talked about last week Brittany Griner and being released, and one of the first things she had to do was go through a psychological evaluation, because we got to make sure you okay. Right? You've been through trauma. Trauma. That's a word we ought to pay more attention to in this world. Trauma. Right? Trauma is all over the place. You'd be surprised what trauma really is. And I make a guess, an educated guess, that all of us in some way, form, or fashion have experienced trauma. Right? And it makes it I heard one person say it like this, that trauma rewires you. It rewires the brain. Right? It's like a pipe, right? And you put a dent in the pipe. Is the pipe still gonna work? Yeah, but it's just gonna adjust to having that dent in it. The water or the air or whatever is going to flow a little bit differently. It's still going to function, but it's dented. Ma'am?
And we as a culture, we are taught to roll with the punches. Even though trauma come, We are not supposed to stay there. We are not supposed to talk about it. We're not supposed to seek help back in the day. And then we grow up as adults, and we don't understand why we go through these emotional roller coasters.
And we pass stuff on. We pass that stuff on to our kids and our grandkids. Stuff that we, because we don't want to deal with our stuff. Exactly. Right. I know people that I'm gonna watch my words carefully in case different folk are watching. You got to watch it because But I know different folk that have kept stuff from their kids, and their kids have voids, literally voids, in their existence, and can't put the pieces together, and really the reason for not telling the kids is selfish. Has nothing to do with them. It's just that you don't need to know that because I don't want you to know it because it's a part of my life that I don't deal with. Yeah, it's gonna hurt you. Yeah, it's gonna hurt you. So I'm not gonna. But really, a lot of that stuff is selfish. It's creating trauma, right? And all this stuff, and all this. I'm telling you, this is all. I'm going somewhere with all this. All of this creates us as people, which puts us in these mindsets where it's unhealthy, and let the right trigger come. Ma'am. Oh, no, sorry, and then ma'am. Yeah. Go ahead, Marvin.
Yeah, could it be that they don't know how to talk to children about certain traumas? Like take my cousin, her husband died, and she wanted to ask me, she said, well, what do I tell the children? I said, just don't lie to them. That's the first thing, don't lie to them. And talk to them at their age, if you can. Then they can accept things. He's not here anymore. He's not coming back. But why? Because God took him home, or whatever. Or somebody took him. But well, you don't know her husband. But it's to say that sometimes you just don't know the words to tell a child. I remember my first death was my grandfather, right? And I couldn't understand why he was in that box and we weren't, And right today, I don't remember what my mother told me, but I couldn't wait to get there to where he was. That's grandpa, But sometimes they just don't know what to say.
And yeah, sometimes you don't know what to say, but a lot of times the not knowing what to say leads to an avoidance. And avoidance is never good. You could avoid stuff as long as it will come up. Everything, have you noticed this in life? Everything you avoid eventually comes. No matter what it is, let's say you avoid taking care of yourself physically, right? Eventually, something's gonna happen, right? You avoid dealing with an issue in a friendship. Eventually, it's gonna show up. That's life, that's everything, Carmen.
I was going to say that wounded girls, wounded boys become wounded men and women. And a lot of it is generational because, like I'll speak like my family when I was little, my parents were teaching me what they were taught. And as the generations have gone, there's more speaking, but I came up, there was no speaking. It was, I don't even think I learned how to properly debate things because you always had to stay in a child's place. You don't speak about this, you don't speak about that. What goes on in these four walls stays in these four walls. So now being in my profession, I try and get people, because you are absolutely right. Avoidance, it's gonna come back and hurt you some way. Because if it doesn't show itself physically, it's gonna show itself physiologically, emotionally, mentally. It's just gonna come out in so many ways, and people will look at you and wonder, what's wrong with them? Or why did they do that? But the reality is, it's been it's been stirring up and brewing in individuals over time.
Yeah.
They just didn't know, and sometimes you don't even know what's going on. There's things, trauma that people experience, things that happen in your youth. You didn't even know that what
absolutely.
was going on, but it somehow finds you later on, and you're wondering why this person all of a sudden is snapping. It started way back when.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
when they didn't have an opportunity to talk, when he didn't have an opportunity to be able to understand what was going on with his grandfather in a casket. Nobody tells you that.
Yeah.
I'm convinced the reason I don't like funerals is because I lost loved ones, my mom, at a very young age, and they treated death as if it was something to be afraid of. So I only go to funerals to support my friends and loved ones. I don't view bodies. I don't do any of that. And a lot of people think that's weird, but I just can't do it. But the reality is it has something to do with how I was introduced to death at the beginning.
How you were conditioned.
Yes.
Indoctrinated.
And it doesn't matter what anybody says to me.
Yeah.
I know ain't nothing that individual can do in that box, but I don't want to remember somebody like that.
Absolutely.
So I deal with if you want to call it trauma, or my experience is one way. I think the thing that we should take away, or people should think about, is when it comes down to trauma, don't be so quick to point the finger or to point and say, oh, what's wrong with them, or they're this, or they're that, because we're one step away from something happening to us that no one will understand, and we're going to need somebody to support us through it.
Exactly. And y'all listen to Carmen. She's a licensed therapist, so she I had to put it out there. She knows what she's talking about, you know. And this. So these are the conditions that create the moment where the trigger can come, right? So I don't know what happened in Elijah's life. I'm not here to. I'm just saying there's a presentation in chapter 18 of who he is, but something happened that triggered something in chapter 19, and now he's running for his life. Right? This is what we're talking about on today. Okay, and y'all heard the story. It's a story that's often told about the lady who was preparing. I forget what it was. Y'all know the story. I think it was a turkey or something. I think it was a turkey. She was preparing a turkey. She would cut it in half and cook one half of the turkey first, and then pull it out and cook the other half of the turkey. And she was teaching her daughter this family recipe where you cut the turkey in half, cook the turkey and all that stuff. And then the little girl said, well, Mommy, why do you cut the turkey like that? She said, well, that's how my mom, it's a family recipe, right? And so she know the answer. She said, well, she went to her mom. She said, well, Mama, why we cut the turkey? Like that, and Mom said, well, that's what your grandmother, that's how we learned. She said, Grandmama, why we cut the turkey, and put it and do it like this? She said, well, back in the day, she said, I didn't have an oven big enough for the whole turkey to go in, so I cut it in half and put one in first, and then. So now, all these years later, they have a stove that's capable, that has the space and the functionality to hold a whole turkey, but they still cutting it in half because that's what was passed on to them. When I heard that story first time, I said, oh my God. Right? The things that we do. You ever been in a conversation with someone? You ever been in a conversation with someone and you talk about some of the things that you do, and you find out that don't nobody else do that but you? And you talking like everybody does it, right? I don't know what you talking. I don't do that. Right? Passed down. Right? I told a story at my dad's funeral. It's a true story. And it wasn't until I was in junior high school that I realized folk didn't do this. My dad would take me to the barbershop, and I get a haircut. And then I think I've told some of y'all this before. So my dad, after we go to the haircut, get a haircut, he would take me to the back room of the house, and he'd get the vacuum cleaner. And he would take the hose from the vacuum cleaner and suck up all the loose hair on my head like this. Right? And then he'd do his own hair. I see him doing this and that. And so I'm at school, I'm like, we're talking. And I'm like, yeah, after get the haircut, I get the vacuum cleaner. And they said, what? I said, yeah, that's how you get the hair out. They said, no, you wash your hair. All my friends wash their hair. I got the vacuum cleaner. Right? And thank God I found out then, because otherwise CJ be getting his head vacuumed. These are the things that create the context for a trigger to happen that can put us in a place where we don't want to be. Maybe even a place that we can't get ourselves out of. A man today, I don't know his life, I don't know his story, I can't speak for him. But he took his own life. Apparently, he may have hit something where he couldn't get himself out of.
I just wanted to mention how so many times with men, as you're growing up, boys that's growing up to men are not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to show emotions. So men grow up holding a whole lot inside until they snap. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's a good thing to do. If it hurts, cry. Mm-hmm. You don't have to stay in it, but still let it out and cry so that it doesn't build up. But, when you were younger, they told you that, right?
Yeah.
Men don't cry.
It's a complicated piece. It's a complicated piece. And so I'm gonna give you something in full transparency, openness that I'm currently dealing with. And hopefully what I'm about to say helps somebody. And so in school I had to take this test. We had to take 2 tests. And one of the tests I had to take was an Enneagram. And so I took this Enneagram, and it breaks you down according to numbers. And my number was a 5. And a 5 is an intellectual person, and they can intellectualize just about anything. And they can intellectualize it in a way where they can trick another person into believing that they feel what they feel because they've intellectualized it in such a way, right? Watch this. So now in the class that I had to take, it makes you deal, like, and Carmen can speak to this, a lot of training and therapy is they call it the self of the therapist, is what they call it, the self of the therapist. Meaning, if you don't deal with your stuff, you better not be trying to deal with somebody else's stuff, right? Because if you don't deal with your stuff, you're going to project onto them and mess somebody else up. So every therapist needs to have a therapist, that kind of situation. And so we're learning about ourselves. We're going through this in class, and it's a crazy class. We're all like messed up. And this intellectual piece, right? And I'm speaking personally. This is a personal story. I was intellectualizing my emotions. I'm gonna mess you up. I was intellectualizing my emotions, meaning I can explain to you everything I'm feeling without feeling it. Because if I feel it, then that means I got to deal with it. So instead of dealing with it, I intellectualize and trick everybody, even myself, into thinking I'm feeling, but I'm really just explaining what's deep down, which I've gone just deep enough to be able to tell you about it without feeling it. Now watch this. There are men, to your point, a friend of mine told me something a long time ago, messed me up. He said, I lost my tears. Meaning that he had been taught for so long to be this kind of way, he can't find them anymore. He says, now I want to cry and can't. I want to feel and can't feel. Life does that. I hope y'all following me on tonight. This is a little different. Mm-hmm. So Elijah is in this situation. Verse 4, goes a day's journey into the wilderness, came and sat down under a broom tree, and there he prayed that he might die. It is enough. Now, Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers. How did we get there? Not only is he running from that old Jezebel, but now he's under a broom tree, right? Other translations say a juniper tree. And he's like, take my life. Now he wants to die. Wow. Lord have mercy, Jesus. It's so painful that I want to die. I mean, think about this. She threatened his life. Now, most people, if you threaten my life, okay, I'm going to run. I'm trying to just, hide. Maybe I'm scared. He wants to die. How'd he get there? It went from, what? Something is going on with this brother. I can't speak to it. Then as he slept under a broom tree, suddenly an angel touched him, said to him, arise and eat. Then he looked, and there by his head was a cake baked on coals and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and laid down again. Angel of the Lord came back the second time, touched him and said, rise and eat, because the journey is too great for you. So he arose, ate and drank, and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights as far as Horeb, the mountain of God. I love that text. Because for me, it is, can we get to a place where we're open enough for God to meet us at the point where we want to die? Is our heart open enough? Is the mind and spirit open enough to when I'm in my lonely place and feel like nobody understands me? When I'm in a place where I'm frustrated and no one seems to be able to ease my frustration. When I'm in a place where I'm despondent, in despair, depressed, and I can't seem to manufacture my joy. Can I open myself up enough for God to meet me? My heart breaks because I don't know. I can't speak to that man's last moments. I'm not trying to speculate. I don't know if he was able to get himself to where he could allow God to meet him in that hotel room. I don't know that. I don't know. I can't speak. I don't know it. I'm just talking. For those of us that are depressed and in a bad mental space during this holiday season, can you just get to the place where you can allow God to come see you? I don't know what that looks like for you. I'm not here to get into those specifics because I can't speak for you. But I can ask the question. So that we are not crying on Christmas Day and inconsolable for the holiday season. where we're at the point where no one can reach us. Or, depending on the context, you have created a facade or image of joy only to go home and crash. Oh, Lord have mercy. Go home and crash. Right? The energy that it takes to do that. You ever had espresso or shot of espresso? Or some stuff. Yeah. So some right. I'm gonna leave you on this story. I'm gonna leave you with this last story. Again, I like to tell stories because I think they're funny and I think they really help us. So I think I've told you the story before as well. So in 2006, I had to drive my family to California from Georgia during the holiday season. Help us, Lord. My mom and my sister, my two nieces, 2 and 3. From Atlanta, Georgia, to Los Angeles, California. Jesus the Christ. Now, it's a long story how the plans came out, but, my uncle drove them there, and then he was supposed to drive them back, and then he said, I ain't doing it. So he left it to me. True story. This is what happened. True story. So we're in Texas. Texas is the longest drive I've ever been in my life. I never again want to drive through the state of Texas. Driving through, it's about midnight. We've been driving all day, just through Texas. And Mom says, hey, you want to get a hotel? I said, no. She said, why not? I said, because when I wake up in the morning, I'm not going to be in Texas. I said, I can't wake up in the morning and still be in Texas. She said, okay, Corey. About midnight, we get to New Mexico. Thank the Lord. Let's get a hotel. No hotel. Go to another one. No hotel, no room. Go to another one, no room. I said, ma'am, listen. I said, the third hotel we've been to, and nobody have any space. What's going on? She said, oh, no one told you? I said, no. She said, we're on I-10. So, the freeways, the 10, 20, 30, 40s are east-west, and the 5, 10, 15, 20 are north-south, right? Like 95, north-south, right? So we're on 10, east-west. She said, well, there was something going on 40, which is east-west. And so that's the people that, from Oklahoma that they're going to the Fiesta Bowl in Arizona. And so they came down to I-10 because of what happened on 40. So there's no hotels available from here to Tucson, Arizona. I said, how far is Tucson? She said, about another 4 or 5 hours. I said, okay. She said, but there's Starbucks, or, you can go get something, to help you. So I get in the car. I said, Mama, there's something happening on I-40. We can't make it. We got to keep going. She said, well, let's just go back to Texas. I said, when I wake up in the morning, I won't be in Texas. So I said, I'm go to the Starbucks. I'm not a real coffee drinker, but I go to the lady. I said, I need to stay up. She said, I get you a mocha with a double shot of espresso. I said, do it, whatever you got to do. I said, drink that. I'm driving. I'm like, I'm up. I'm like, my mom said, you all right? I'm like, she said, my sister, kids, they sleep in the back. I ain't got no problem. Make it there. All good. I am straight. So everyone, they go to sleep in the hotel room. I can't really sleep, I wake up, I go get everybody breakfast. Y'all ready to head on? Yeah, head on. Head on back, get to Los Angeles, clean out the rental car, take it back. it's New Year's Eve. And so I'm like, okay, whew, that was a trip. I said, well, watch some football, stay up till midnight, and celebrate the new year. The next thing I remember, it was noon the next day. Why? Because when you get stuff to get you through, it catches up and you will crash. That's the point of the whole story, that you'll crash. Let's not crash and burn, family. Let's work with our stuff, and let's get through this holiday season with joy. Is that all right? Family, may the joy of the Lord be your strength, and may God meet you in your alone time to get you through the holiday season. This is the last Bible study of the year. We'll see you next year. God loves you, so do I. Take care. God bless.